No way, that can't be true. We live together. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your less fortunate life. I stood there in shock, holding the phone after the call ended abruptly. The lawyer couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jessica looked at the lawyer with a confused expression, and the lawyer wiped away tears with a handkerchief. The person in charge is actually Linda. My name is Linda. I've been married to my husband, Mike, for 2 years. We don't have kids. Both of us work and are so busy that we often work on weekends. We hardly have time for long talks, leading to a life of passing each other by. So we try to sync our schedules and go on overseas trips during our long breaks. It's just once a year, but we both eagerly anticipate it. When we got married, we decided to buy a condo on an upper floor in a Bay Area tower. It was a bit of a stretch, but we did it thinking about the future value of the property. Thankfully, we're content with our current life. I have a close friend from high school, Jessica. We sometimes have lunch together. Jessica, who is beautiful, has high standards for men. She's not married yet, but really wants to be. She's always searching for well-educated, high-income men on dating apps, especially. She won't compromise on income. One day, I was having lunch with Jessica at a cafe near a park. We've been together since high school and university, even sharing the same classes. That's why we've consulted each other about various things. As a result, we know quite a bit about each other's dating histories and preferences. During our student days, we shared both fun and sad times. Those are good memories. Now, ever since I married Mike 2 years ago, our schedules have gotten busier, and our time together has decreased significantly. We only manage to meet a few times a year, if that. "Hey, can I visit your condo next time?" Jessica suddenly asked. Jessica had never been to my place before. On the weekend, she came over, and even through the intercom, I could sense her amazement at the entrance. Jessica kept saying, "This is amazing." The moment I opened the front door, she looked impressed. "Wow, this place is like a mansion, and that elevator right up was so long." I chose a spacious upper floor condo as a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. It's even more spacious than a house without compromising. It's beautiful, truly incredible. Jessica looked around, turning her head in every direction. Great location and an upper floor in a high-rise like, "This must have cost a pretty fortune," she asked with a sly smile. "Yeah, it's what you'd call a $1 million condominium. It has great security too. Look here." Jessica cut me off, reacting only to the term $1 million condominium. "Right, it must be over $1 million. Your husband must be making a lot," she said, eyes wide with astonishment. That was so like Jessica, always having high standards for men, especially regarding their income. "Mike's salary is quite high for his age, I guess," I said vaguely. I felt it was tacky to be too explicit. "Huh." She had a look that seemed to have some ulterior motive. Jessica said, "Can I use your bathroom?" and left the living room. I told her where the bathroom was and then started preparing tea in the kitchen, concerned about Jessica, who was taking a while to return. I was about to head to the bathroom when she came back, just replying to an email. Jessica doesn't usually make excuses like that. I felt a slight sense of unease while enjoying the cookies Jessica brought as a gift and having tea. She asked, "Can I stay till evening?" She apparently wanted to greet Mike. Indeed, it had been since our wedding that Jessica last saw Mike. It's not unnatural for her to want to see him. I decided to check with Mike just in case. Mike happily agreed. "I might finish work early," he replied in an email. I told Jessica it was okay. And then I started preparing dinner. Jessica was fiddling with her smartphone but then stood up and headed to the bathroom again. I didn't notice while cooking, but Jessica seemed to be gone for quite a while. When she came back, she was wearing a familiar necklace. I recognized it. It was my necklace. As I gazed at the necklace, Jessica flashed an embarrassed smile. "How do I look? Does it suit me?" She posed like a model. Seeing my stunned expression, Jessica burst into laughter. "Oh, come on, I'm just kidding. I found it and thought it was cute. It must have been super expensive, right? A premium piece for sure." Jessica rambled like a child trying to excuse a misdeed. That's a gift for Mike. Wow, he must be really wealthy to afford something like this, Jessica sighed. But more importantly, that necklace was stored in the closet in the bedroom. Jessica must have pretended to go to the bathroom and instead went to the bedroom, peeking into the closet. That's what it seemed like. I couldn't believe her actions. However, I didn't want to come off as petty, so I simply emphasized that it was a precious item. Taking advantage of my lack of reprimand, Jessica made an outrageous request. "Can I borrow this necklace for a while?" I was speechless and fell silent. "I've got a date with a doctor I met on a dating app. I want to wear it for that," she pleaded, joining her hands together as if praying. Reluctantly, I decided to lend it to her. "All right, but take good care of it. Like I said earlier, it's a gift from Mike." As soon as Jessica knew she could borrow it, she smiled and began caressing the necklace. "Of course, I understand." She seemed to pay no mind to my words. When I finished the meal prep, I pretended to go to the bathroom to check the bedroom. Sure enough, the closet in the bedroom and the chest beside the bed were fully closed. Jessica must have opened every drawer and door she could find. There were fingerprints on the jewelry, watches, and precious metals. Jessica might have touched things but probably didn't intend to borrow them. The shoes seemed to have been forced on, and the heels were misshapen. This was clearly going too far. I returned to the living room and confronted Jessica. "You touched various things in the bedroom, didn't you? The shoes were misshaped, and there were fingerprints on the watch." Instead of showing remorse, Jessica puffed out her cheeks a bit. "Please don't do that again." She returned to her normal expression and apologized, saying sorry. I didn't want to dwell on this and risk straining our friendship, so I decided to just lightly laugh it off. That's when Mike came home, holding a box of cake. Mike and Jessica saw each other for the first time since our wedding. It was awkward at first, but they gradually warmed up to each other, making for a lively dinner. By the time we ate the cake Mike brought, they were chatting like good friends. While I was clearing the dishes and washing up, they were laughing together. Really, my boss is terrible, right? I envy Mike's subordinates. Mike was grinning, eyes crinkling with laughter. That's not true. I was a bit bothered by Jessica casually touching Mike. But at the time, I thought it was better than them being distant. After all, Mike wasn't the type of man Jessica usually goes out with. About a month after Jessica's visit, Mike's behavior started to change. He spent more time on his smartphone, which he usually didn't do much. He often seemed distracted when I talked to him and asked me to repeat myself. He always carried the phone with him, even taking it to the bathroom. It was an obvious change. It seemed I had become a cheated-on wife. I thought about checking Mike's phone once, but I was reluctant to even touch it. Conversations between Mike and me at home became increasingly rare. Mike started working on weekends much more. He was hardly ever at home on weekends. Originally, we barely saw each other on weekdays, but now not seeing each other on weekends too. It's like we're living separately within the same house. Moreover, we started sleeping in separate bedrooms under the pretext of his tiredness. I was vaguely thinking about divorce or separation when I found divorce papers on the living room table. Upon closer inspection, Mike had already signed the divorce papers. Though I had suspected it, actually seeing it still shook me. With trembling hands, I called Mike. "I just got home and saw it on the table. What does this mean exactly?" "What it looks like." "I want a divorce." I pressed Mike for a proper reason. "I've fallen in love with someone else. It's not an affair. I'm serious," Mike said. It was obviously nothing but cheating. Then I heard a familiar female voice on the phone. It was Jessica. Well, it was what I had expected. "I'm dating Mike. I even want to marry him." Though I had suspected it, hearing it confirmed made my heart race and brought on a cold sweat. I fell for Mike the moment I saw him at your house. We exchanged contact details and started messaging. One thing led to another, and here we are. Jessica's way of talking had become crude. Maybe this was her true nature. "Mike says there's nothing left to talk about. Can you just sign the divorce papers and send them off?" I want to talk things over, so please tell Mike to come home. Once it? No way, we're living together now. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your poor life. Standing dumbfounded with the abruptly ended phone call in hand, I couldn't move for a while. After that, sleepless nights continued for me. Mike didn't come home. I couldn't bring myself to touch the divorce papers lying on the living room table. They just remained there untouched. Furthermore, Jessica kept sending me multiple photos of her and Mike together, flaunting their relationship. It must be an intimate relationship, but what kind of harassment is this? My mental health deteriorated and my complexion worsened. Sometimes I become vacant even during the day. Concerned people around me strongly suggested I go to the hospital, and I ended up being somewhat forcibly taken for treatment. Taking medication, I managed to regain some peace, and I started to be able to sleep. I could somehow go to work. But then an unbelievable incident happened. When I returned from the hospital, something felt off inside the room. Going to the bedroom and opening the closet, I found that bags and jewelry were missing. The count of jewelry watches in the chest was off too. There was only one person who could do this. Why would she do something like this? What had I ever done to her? My insomnia relapsed and sleepless nights continued, leaving me stumbling through my days. During counseling at the hospital, when I mentioned the theft at home, I was strongly advised to consult a lawyer. I promptly contacted the company's lawyer and set up an appointment. The lawyer asked me first, "What would you like to do?" "I'll get a divorce. I want those two to face proper consequences." I answered immediately, surprising even myself. Just a little while ago, I was wondering what to do. I couldn't believe how easily those words came out of my mouth. Perhaps I really wanted to punish them after being tormented so one-sidedly. It was just about getting back at them. Now, a week later, I received a message from Jessica. I had sent her a certified letter. "Hey, what are you thinking, sending a certified letter to my workplace?" Jessica sounded pretty angry, her voice filled with rage. "You must have expected at least this much. Anyway, I'm leaving everything to my lawyer now." I hung up the phone. Jessica called several times after that, but I ignored all of them. Then Mike called. I had sent a certified letter to his parents' house. Apparently, his affair being exposed at home caused a huge uproar. I wanted to burst out laughing at his self-inflicted predicament, but managed to restrain myself. Feeling that leaving it all to the lawyer wouldn't be enough to calm my feelings, I decided to confront them both. I would denounce them thoroughly on the spot. The lawyer arranged the date and time, and we decided to have the discussion at the law office. A few days later, the two reluctantly showed up at the law office. I thought they would bring their own lawyer, but it seemed they came alone. Jessica stormed into the office, flinging the door open. Mike followed, looking uncomfortable. "Finally, we meet, you coward." Jessica made no effort to hide her anger, but Mike stepped forward, trying to calm her down. "Well, you've been running away all this time. Our wedding's been delayed because of you." Jessica looked like she might throw her bag at me any moment. Mike was desperately trying to hold her back. As I watched them with a pitiful feeling, the lawyer nodded at me. "Please calm down. If any violence or abusive language occurs, we will immediately call the police." "Understood." The mention of the police made Jessica stiffen. With the lawyer's intervention, Jessica and Mike took their seats, becoming calmer. We sat across from each other at the office table, ready to start the discussion. "Mike, you're seeking a divorce, correct?" Jessica was sitting heatedly, while Mike slumped, looking small. "We agreed to the divorce. However, since your relationship is adultery, we will ask for alimony. Is there any significance to this?" Mike's face clouded over. "I'll agree to the divorce, but once the alimony is paid, don't contact us ever." I quietly nodded in agreement. Jessica looked displeased. Maybe she expected more resistance from me. When the lawyer began discussing the alimony amount, Jessica snapped. I said any amount is fine. "We have plenty of money." Jessica sat arrogantly with her arms crossed. The lawyer looked at her with interest, saying, "Oh yes, didn't he research? Mike is the president of a jewelry company with a yearly revenue of $2 billion. Mike looked up frantically, trying to restrain Jessica's arm. Jessica, her face flushed, continued excitedly. Alimony for an affair is nothing to us. I'll even give a proper share of the property. Mike was trying hard to calm her down. Jessica shook off his hand and continued, "You can barely make ends meet on your salary, right?" She scoffed with a laugh. The lawyer burst into uncontrollable laughter. Jessica looked at him with a puzzled expression. The lawyer wiped tears with a handkerchief. "Actually, the president is Linda." Jessica was dumbstruck, her mouth hanging open. Mike hung his head, his body trembling slightly. "Mike is just an ordinary employee with no position at Linda's company. I am Linda's corporate lawyer." Jessica started laughing loudly. "What are you talking about? Are you really a lawyer? Can lawyers lie?" The lawyer calmly replied, "Why not ask Mike next to you if what I said is a lie?" Meanwhile, Mike just bit his lip, looking down. Growing anxious, Jessica grabbed Mike's arms and began shaking him. "You said you were the president of a $2 billion jewelry company. That's not a lie, right?" Mike remained silent, covering his face with his hands, uttering inaudible moans. Jessica, growing more desperate, gripped his arms tighter, repeatedly asking, "Answer me. It's not a lie, right?" Mike finally whispered in a raspy voice, "I'm sorry." The room fell into deep silence. Jessica's strength seemed to leave her body, and she let her hands that were gripping Mike fall limply. "You said you were the president of a company making $2 billion a year," she muttered to herself. Mike's single apology had plunged Jessica into despair. She stood up, trembling. "It's a lie, right? There's no way you're the president." Jessica pointed at me accusingly. "Why didn't I know about this after all we shared?" I spoke to Jessica calmly, as if guiding her. "Just because we're close friends doesn't mean I tell you everything, especially since you were so fixated on money. I had no intention of telling you." I looked Jessica straight in the eyes without averting my gaze. Jessica seemed to lose all her energy and slumped down. "Then that house, of course. The house is in my name, so Mike will be the one leaving." Jessica fell silent, and Mike continued to hold his head. Mike probably didn't want to come here. He knew this would happen. But if he didn't come here, things would be worse. It's hell either way for him now. The lawyer began presenting the evidence I had gathered. First, these photos of Mike and Jessica together. They were the photos sent to my phone, now printed. The lawyer placed an IC recorder on the table and played the recorded conversation. "Why would you send something like this?" "I just wanted to share our happiness with you." Jessica's voice filled the room while Mike seemed to be holding back tears. "Hey, still clinging to the past. I want a divorce." "I know what you're clinging to. It's Mike's income. He's the president of a $2 billion jewelry company, right? You hid it because you thought I might take it." Jessica, perhaps embarrassed, covered her face with her hands. "Hurry up and divorce and leave that condo. It'll be mine soon. Too bad Mike didn't come back to you. I'll give you as much alimony as you want. Poor thing, your aim was the money, not Mike. I'm speechless at how you've been deceived, Mike." Mike looked down, tears spilling onto his pants. Mike and Jessica fell silent. "Do you think this is over?" the lawyer asked. "What else is there, Jessica? You broke into the house when Linda wasn't there and stole several items, didn't you?" I felt relieved at the lawyer's calm demeanor. Mike looked shocked, apparently unaware of this. "Hey, what's this about stealing?" Jessica bit her lower lip, her hands shaking. "No, not me. I don't know anything." The lawyer placed a tablet on the table and played a video. It showed Jessica sneaking into the bedroom, taking bags and jewelry, and stuffing them into her bag. Jessica stared wide-eyed at the footage. "What is this? Why are you recording me? Isn't this illegal surveillance?" Mike covered his face with his hands. "Inside our house always had security cameras. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? Who would think you'd break in to steal?" I felt a headache coming on from their foolish exchange. "And you used my key without permission. I wanted those things. It's your fault for not buying them for me." The two began arguing, ignoring us. The lawyer and I could only look on in disbelief. Please save your arguments for later. Regarding this theft, we will be filing a police report. Jessica seemed to panic at the mention of the police. The police? That's a bit much, isn't it? I just borrowed something from a friend. I never gave you permission to borrow anything. I spoke to her calmly. Besides, you're not a friend or anything. You were just a classmate. That's why I'm filing a police report. Jessica seemed to realize she was defeated, and her attitude became sullen. Don't say that. I'll pay for it. I'll compensate. Just please don't call the police. Jessica started to kneel and apologize. I looked down at her and said coldly, "You're going to compensate. The value of what you stole is more than your annual income." Are you sure about that? Jessica was speechless. And there's also the matter of the alimony. Jessica turned to Mike, pleading in a tearful voice. You'll pay, right? Even if you're not the president, you still earn well, right? Mike was silent, looking down. He can't pay. He's about to be fired, the lawyer said. Mike looked up in surprise. That's correct. Since leaving the house, Mike has not shown up for work. Plus, with this commotion, there have been complaints from his boss. Mike looked like he might collapse on the floor. But there's still the property division, right? I'll pay with that. That's not possible. Linda and Mike have a prenuptial agreement regarding property. You didn't hear anything from Mike, did you? He never told you the inconvenient truths. I looked at Mike with disdain. The lawyer placed the contract on the table. The agreement states that if the marriage lasts less than 3 years, neither party can claim the other's property. You're currently in the 2nd year of marriage. Jessica tried to grab the document as if to tear it up. You should handle that document carefully. It's a notarized deed, and you could be held legally accountable for damaging it. At the mention of crime, Jessica stopped. She began to half-heartedly plead with Mike. Mike, you have savings, right? Use that to pay. Mike looked at Jessica with resentful eyes. What money? You always wanted sushi, steak, this, that. There's no way I have any savings left. It appears that way, and it seems he has debts from unsavory sources. Jessica's shoulders slumped. It's a pitiable sight. The glamorous appearance that used to make men turn their heads is nowhere to be seen. But this is the result of the seeds she herself sowed. The two sat looking haggard and lost, muttering, "This wasn't supposed to happen, and what will I do now?" I decided to leave the rest to the lawyer and stood up to leave. Jessica, money isn't something you steal from others. It's something you earn through effort. After that, the divorce went through smoothly. I sent all of Mike's belongings back to his parents. His parents kept apologizing to me and even sent a letter of apology. Jessica was interrogated by the police for illegal entry and theft. My police report led to an investigation, and Jessica was arrested after admitting her guilt. Half of the stolen items have been sold, but I got the rest back. Despite the maliciousness of her actions, her show of remorse and intent to compensate suggested she might receive a suspended sentence. However, Jessica had other crimes. It was revealed that she had been stealing from men she met on a dating app. This meant she would likely face a prison sentence. No wonder she reacted so strongly to the mention of the police and crime. Mike couldn't live in Jessica's apartment and moved to an old apartment on the outskirts of town. He's looking for a job, but his unexplained absences and poor attitude at his last job make it hard for him to get hired. He's getting by with day labor for now. I receive regular updates on their situations from the lawyer. After the divorce, I threw myself into work. Now I'm expanding our company's jewelry line to Europe. The idea came after a trip to Europe I took as a break after the divorce. I had the chance to drink wine with the owner of a jewelry store in France. During that time, I spoke fervently to the owner about jewelry designs. At that time, the owner and I hit it off, and he agreed to showcase my company's jewelry in his store. The owner is a wonderful man who, perhaps because of his own divorce history, understands my heartache. To be honest, I'm focusing on sales in France to see him. It might be mixing business with pleasure, but I think I've earned this perk after all I've been through. That's how hard it was for me. Greetings, everyone. My name is Ellie, and before I begin my story, I want to offer a trigger warning as it involves instances of abuse. I won't delve too deeply into the details, but I feel it's important to share some of what I endured due to my monstrous mother-in-law. The regret I feel about marrying my now ex-husband, Jake, is profound. Initially, I believed Jake to be a good man, coming from a respected family. His mother, Chrissy, worked at a charitable foundation, while his father, Xavier, was a successful businessman. They seemed like the epitome of a great family, and I was happy to join them. However, everything changed after I married Jake. Chrissy's demeanor toward me shifted, becoming increasingly abusive. It began subtly, with her hiding my belongings and laughing as I frantically searched for them. She would then ask me to handle scalding hot pots, intentionally putting me in harm's way. On one occasion, she even spiked her chicken casserole with shrimp juice, knowing I was allergic, causing me to miss an important event. Her cruelty didn't stop there. She would make me slave over meals for hours, only to throw them on the floor. She'd feign innocence or claim it was all accidental. Once, she even tripped me intentionally during a family dinner, hoping to humiliate me. After enduring months of this mistreatment, I finally confronted Chrissy and sought help from Jake. I demanded to know why she was treating me this way. However, Jake's response shocked me. He dismissed my accusations, suggesting I was jealous and overreacting. Despite knowing about his mother's manipulations, he chose to believe her lies. I pleaded with Jake to acknowledge his mother's abusive behavior, but he refused to see the truth. It was baffling and heartbreaking to witness the man I loved siding with his toxic mother over me. It felt like I had lost him, and the pain was unbearable. I was struck by a sudden realization as his words pierced through me like a thunderbolt. His mother's venomous accusation left me speechless, struggling to comprehend why he would condone such behavior. "Jake, your wife is overstepping all bounds," his mother interjected, her tone dripping with disdain. "If she persists in this behavior, we might have to show her the door." I always knew she was unworthy of our family, and now she's proving it. "If you stand by her, you might as well leave with her. It'll help us make a clearer decision about your inheritance." In that moment, Jake's response shattered any hope I had left. "Mom, Ellie is being irrational right now," he declared, his allegiance wavering. "I don't support her at all. I promise she'll fall in line or you can kick her out. I won't object. You've always been the rational one, Mom. Thank goodness you see through her madness. It's unbelievable how she's blaming me for her own clumsiness and accusing me of abuse." The realization hit me like a freight train. Living with Jake's parents had been their demand, and Jake, reliant on his father's company for income, had succumbed to their wishes. Despite possessing assets, he lacked the courage to stand up to his parents, prioritizing his inheritance over our well-being. It was clear he was selfish and greedy, willing to sacrifice our happiness for his own gain. "What's wrong with you, Ellie?" Jake's words cut through me like a knife. "Are you trying to get us evicted? Seriously, Jake, is that all you have to say?" I retorted, my voice trembling with disappointment. "What kind of husband are you?" His response was chilling. "The kind that secures our future," he snapped. "You're insane to think I'd accuse my mom of such things. And don't drag me into your problems. If she's upset with me, do you think Dad will still give me my inheritance? Is your inheritance more important than your wife?" I pleaded, my heart sinking. "We don't need their wealth. Let's leave and buy our own home, a place where no one can abuse us." Jake's refusal was unequivocal. "Ellie, we could never afford a house like this," he dismissed. "I'm not going anywhere. You'll tolerate my mom and stop complaining. If you don't, she'll kick you out, and I won't lift a finger to help you." In that moment, the depth of his betrayal became painfully clear. When the realization hit me that my marriage had reached its breaking point, Jake's betrayal cut deep. The man I believed in turned out to be someone entirely different, leaving me feeling helpless and unsure of my next steps. To make matters worse, Chrissy intensified her abusive tactics, emboldened by Jake's silence. Despite the overwhelming urge to run away and start anew, I decided against it. I refused to let Chrissy escape accountability for her actions. So I devised a plan to expose her for the manipulative and cruel person she truly was. My strategy was straightforward. I accessed the security cameras around the house and discreetly gathered all the recordings. In the shadows, I found plenty of evidence documenting Chrissy's abuse against me. I meticulously compiled these damning moments into a video, saving it for a strategic moment. As Chrissy's birthday approached and a small celebration with invited guests loomed, including Xavier, I knew the time had come to execute my plan. The countdown began for my D-Day, the day I aimed to unveil Chrissy's true nature to the world. On Chrissy's birthday, she played her usual role of a jolly and sophisticated woman, seemingly caring and gracious, especially around guests. I chose to remain silent, biding my time until the moment was right. After the birthday cake was cut, I stood up and made an unexpected announcement. "Thank you, everyone, for joining to celebrate my dear mother-in-law, Chrissy," I began. "I'm sure you already know what a sweet and caring woman our birthday girl is. Today, on Chrissy's birthday, I thought I should show you exactly how much of a good person she is. I've set up a screen to display a video I made about my great mother-in-law. Instead of words, let me allow you to see this dedicated video and make your wishes for our dear birthday girl." I played the video, fully prepared for any backlash. My friends were on standby, ready for a call if needed. After enduring years of abuse at the hands of my monstrous mother-in-law, I was done being a doormat. I stood up, exposing her two-faced self to everyone, caring little for the consequences, not for my mother-in-law, not for my husband. I was done. As the people watched the video I had painstakingly compiled over the last few months, a collective gasp of horror filled the room. Chrissy and Jake stood in a corner, overwhelmed by shock, while Xavier reflected on their reactions. My moment of truth had arrived, and I wasn't backing down. I couldn't bring myself to blame the man. Jake had been absent for days, unaware of the turmoil brewing in his own home. As the video came to an end, it was my father-in-law who broke the stunned silence. "What the hell did I just watch?" he demanded. Chrissy attempted to deflect, claiming the videos were fabricated and taken out of context. But my father-in-law wasn't convinced. "Fabricated?" he retorted. "You're suggesting Ellie went to such lengths just to humiliate you?" Xavier's skepticism fueled Chrissy's denial. "Ellie is doing this out of malice," she insisted. "I would never stoop to such levels." Chrissy's blatant lies grated on my nerves. She sought to discredit my year of suffering, painting me as the villain. It baffled me how anyone could believe her after witnessing her true nature firsthand. With a calm resolve, I challenged her. "So now you want to blame me for tarnishing your image, Chrissy? Let's call the cops and let them decide if the videos are genuine." Chrissy scoffed at the suggestion, dismissing the idea that the authorities would take my claims seriously. But her composure wavered when faced with the prospect of legal scrutiny. I had cornered her in a way she hadn't anticipated. By sheer luck, I discovered that some of Chrissy's friends, colleagues from the charitable foundation where she worked, were present. They cast disapproving glances her way, their fingers busy with their phones, likely informing their superiors about the unfolding drama. Unaware of the mounting evidence against her, Chrissy desperately tried to rally support from Xavier, accusing me of delusion and threats. But even Jake's feeble defense crumbled under scrutiny. His loyalty to his mother eclipsed his duty to his wife, a realization that left everyone stunned. Xavier, however, wasn't blind to his son's failings. He saw through Jake's weak excuses and Chrissy's manipulations. His anger simmered, fueled by a sense of justice that demanded retribution for the abuse I endured under his roof. In that moment, I knew Xavier would stand with me, his integrity outweighing the allure of family fortune. It was a turning point, one that would lead to the reckoning Chrissy deserved. When I finally mustered the courage to confide in Jake about the abuse, his response was disbelief and denial. He brushed off my allegations, insisting that I was overreacting and falsely accusing Chrissy. According to him, upsetting Chrissy and jeopardizing our stay at the house was not a risk he was willing to take. In that moment, it became painfully clear that I needed concrete proof to substantiate my claims. Jake's dismissive reaction made it apparent that without evidence, no one would believe the extent of the abuse I endured. In a heartfelt admission, I shared my struggle with Xavier, Jake's father. "Why didn't you come to me sooner, Helly?" Xavier questioned. "I needed to collect proof and show everyone what a monster Chrissy is," I replied. His response was one of regret and an acknowledgement of his failure to instill the right values in his son. Xavier expressed sincere remorse for what I had endured and offered his support. However, when I suggested calling the police, Xavier surprised everyone by stating he wouldn't interfere and suggested I proceed if I deemed it necessary. This declaration prompted a vehement objection from both Chrissy and Jake. Chrissy accused Xavier of letting me ruin our lives by involving the authorities. Jake, too, pleaded with his father, claiming that calling the police wasn't necessary and emphasizing that we were family. I shut down their attempts to dictate my actions, firmly declaring that abusers and enablers could never be considered my family. I asserted my decision to divorce Chrissy and disinherit Jake, severing all ties with such toxic individuals. To their shock, Chrissy and Jake had assumed they could manipulate the narrative, but the crowd's enthusiastic response to Xavier's declaration revealed the depth of their deception. Chrissy's friends, who had supported me, had already left, promising to hold Chrissy accountable for her actions. Unfazed by their pleas, Xavier stood by my side, emphasizing that my claims were backed by proof. He acknowledged my efforts to reveal the truth and expressed his intention to do what was right by me. Jake, in a feeble attempt to salvage his standing, apologized and claimed ignorance about the severity of his mother's actions. However, Xavier remained resolute, highlighting Jake's failure to act despite being presented with evidence, emphasizing the value of my truth over preserving an inheritance. I couldn't fathom what I had ever seen in them. The irony stung. Xavier, Chrissy's father, stood by me more firmly than Jake, my own husband. His support meant everything to me, especially in that moment of turmoil. "I support you wholeheartedly, Ellie," Xavier affirmed, his disappointment in Jake palpable. "My imbecile son doesn't deserve you, nor does he deserve the inheritance he covets." Jake's desperate pleas fell on deaf ears. "Dad, you can't do this to me," he protested, clinging to the title of son, even as Xavier disowned him. But Xavier had had enough of being manipulated and used as an ATM by two people who added no value to his life. "I'm done being an ATM to two useless people who are nothing but a waste of space on this earth," Xavier declared, his resolve unyielding. "Since you've embraced greed and falsehoods like your mother, you can leave with her after our divorce. There's no home here for you anymore." Jake's disbelief was palpable, his tears a testament to his shattered illusions. But amidst his apologies and tears, there was no remorse for the pain they had caused me. Their priorities were laid bare for all to see. Money and reputation mattered more to them than the suffering they had inflicted upon me for a year. It was a sobering realization, one that left me disgusted with the man I had called my husband. He mourned the loss of his inheritance more than the revelation of his wife's abuse. Chrissy, too, was thunderstruck by the consequences of her actions, her tears flowing as she begged Xavier for forgiveness. But Xavier saw through their desperate pleas, recognizing their selfishness and lack of genuine remorse. They apologized not to me, the main victim, but to Xavier, fearing the loss of their comfortable lifestyle. Their apologies rang hollow, each word dripping with insincerity. I recoiled from their touch, feeling tainted by their deceit and manipulation. Xavier's insight mirrored my own observations. They cared more about their own comforts than atoning for their cruelty. As they pleaded for forgiveness, I felt a surge of anger and disgust. Their facade crumbled in the face of their desperation, revealing the depths of their selfishness and deceit. I wanted nothing to do with them, scrambling away from their hollow apologies as if their touch would contaminate me further. I wanted those monsters far away from me, and I made it clear that their fake apologies held no weight. I saw through their remorse, recognizing it as a consequence of being caught rather than genuine regret. I scoffed at their attempts to salvage what they deemed a perfect family, finding the irony in their twisted version of perfection. Their pleas for forgiveness were absurd, especially when they claimed to love each other. The notion of us being family was laughable, considering their year-long abuse. Their fake apologies felt like jokes, and I reveled in the power I held over their uncertain futures. With a small smile, I dismissed their delusions, labeling them as nothing but leeches. Their apologies were prompted by self-interest, not genuine remorse, and I refused to forgive them. I made it clear that Jake and I were getting a divorce, asserting my decision despite his pleas and excuses. Xavier joined me in firm resolve, stating that he would disinherit Jake regardless of my decision. The prenup ensured Chrissy wouldn't receive a penny from him. With their lives in disarray, they sought refuge with me, but I promptly kicked them out and threatened a restraining order if they dared to contact me again. I refrained from involving the legal system, as Xavier's actions had already cast them into deep trouble. He evicted them from the house, and their lives unraveled further. Chrissy lost her job, exposed by her friends at the charitable foundation, while Jake saw his job vanish with his father's company. They became desperate, reaching out to me for help, but I remained steadfast in my refusal. Months passed, and I settled into my own place, renting initially while awaiting the finalization of the divorce. Jake, lacking a prenup, had to split his few remaining assets with me. The threat of exposing the abuse videos hastened the divorce process. I eventually purchased a small flat, securing my independence from the toxic past. Jake, now working 2 jobs to support his unemployed mother, reached out to me, complaining about his miserable situation and expressing a desire to return. I scoffed at his plea, reminding him to enjoy his new life before hanging up. My revenge had been long and satisfying, and even after ceasing my actions, karma continued to catch up with them. Currently, I lead a good life, while Xavier has found his peace. On the other hand, Jake and Chrissy face the consequences of their actions, getting a significant dose of karma for the pain they inflicted. Greetings, friends! I'm Mia, and I'm here to share the tale of how circumstances unfolded between me and my mother-in-law, Rita. Well, to be fair, Rita managed to steer her own ship into troubled waters, but she might believe I played a part in it. If only she hadn't meddled in her son Nigel's marital plans, she could have spared herself the ordeal. Now, let me walk you through the events that led to Rita's toxic influence being expelled from my life. Rita harbored an inexplicable disdain for me, a sentiment seemingly directed at every woman Nigel dated. It was evident that she had an unhealthy attachment to Nigel, perceiving women as threats to her bond with her son. Luckily, Nigel's father, Luke, differed from her in temperament and maintained a warm relationship with me, considering me his daughter. This made it all the more infuriating when I unearthed Rita's shocking betrayal. Rita's animosity reached new heights when Nigel and I announced our engagement. She concocted baseless accusations, alleging that I was unfaithful with my male best friend. The absurdity of her claims, devoid of any evidence, stemmed purely from her suspicions. My best friend and I, having a strong platonic bond since childhood, respected the boundaries set by our respective spouses. Nigel, understanding this, had no concerns, but Rita insisted on fabricating a scandal. In a heated confrontation, Rita tried to convince Nigel that a man and a woman couldn't maintain a close friendship without ulterior motives. She accused me of trapping him due to his good income, dismissing our genuine connection. Nigel staunchly defended our relationship, declaring his trust in my loyalty. Rita persisted, labeling me a deceitful schemer, drawing from her own dubious past. Despite Rita's attempts to tarnish our engagement, Nigel and I proceeded with our marriage. Rita, undeterred, propagated her false narrative, attempting to convince others that Nigel was marrying a cheater. Some family members initially bought into the confusion, but when Nigel set the record straight, they rightfully turned against Rita, extending apologies to me. Nigel, joined by his father, confronted Rita, who showed no remorse but promised to restrain her actions. Hopeful that Rita would mend her ways, I soon discovered that her antics had only just begun. The turning point in Rita's downfall commenced with her next malicious move. When I discovered I was pregnant with our first child, joy enveloped our family. Nigel, brimming with excitement at the prospect of fatherhood, and Luke, thrilled to become a grandfather, shared in the happiness. However, my mother-in-law, Rita, stood out as the exception, harboring unfounded suspicions of my fidelity. As the pregnancy progressed, her claims escalated, alleging that the child was not Nigel's. The situation took a bizarre turn after our son's birth when Rita declared that the baby couldn't be Nigel's based on a perceived dissimilarity to Nigel's own baby photos. Nigel, perplexed by his mother's insistence, confronted her, defending the natural variations in a baby's appearance. Rita, however, insisted that our child's lighter skin tone was evidence of a discrepancy. In the ensuing argument, Nigel reached a breaking point and asked Rita to leave the hospital. Undeterred, Rita immediately spread rumors about our son's parentage, casting doubt among acquaintances. Faced with the escalating pressure, I reluctantly agreed to a DNA test, despite Nigel's unwavering trust in our relationship. As if the situation wasn't tumultuous enough, Luke, Nigel's father, dropped a bombshell during a family conversation. With a grave demeanor, he confessed that recent discussions with a doctor had raised doubts about his biological connection to Nigel. The revelation left us all stunned, particularly Nigel, who struggled to comprehend the possibility. In the midst of this revelation, Luke urged secrecy from Rita and proposed that both Nigel and I undergo DNA testing to uncover the truth. The atmosphere in our household shifted from the initial joy of impending parenthood to an unexpected and bewildering quest for familial clarity. I was resolved to confront Rita once the DNA results were in. She had planned a family dinner to announce the outcome regarding Nigel and my grandson's paternity. Despite the turmoil, I assumed responsibility for managing the situation, as Nigel and Luke were visibly overwhelmed. When the DNA test was completed, Rita eagerly unveiled the results at the dinner, hoping to humiliate me. However, in her eagerness, she grabbed the wrong envelope, inadvertently revealing that the tested individuals were not a match. Rita's exuberance quickly turned to shock as she proclaimed that Nigel wasn't the father of my son, insinuating my infidelity. Rita reveled in the perceived opportunity to undermine my relationship with Nigel, but her joy was short-lived. Unfazed by her accusations, I remained composed, while Luke and Nigel were visibly shaken with anger. Rita, misinterpreting their reaction, intensified her accusations, convinced of my deceit. Nigel, unable to contain his frustration, intervened, expressing unwavering support for me and our family. His defense of our bond and trust in me resonated profoundly, underscoring his commitment. Despite Rita's insistence on the DNA test's infallibility, Nigel challenged her to reconsider, urging her to reassess the results. In the face of Nigel's steadfastness, Rita's certainty wavered, and her accusations faltered. Nigel's unwavering trust in our relationship spoke volumes, reaffirming the strength of our family bond. As tensions eased, it became evident that Rita's misguided suspicions had only served to strengthen our resolve and deepen our unity. I comprehend that you're grappling with shock and sadness, and I know this revelation may seem surreal, but it's the reality, son. Your wife has deceived you. She's orchestrating a scenario where you're unknowingly raising someone else's child. Luke, breaking his silence, spoke with thunderous resolve. Initially frozen in shock and anger, he now found his voice, ready to address the unsettling truth. In response, Luke confronted Rita, recalling her past attempt to pass off Nigel as his own son. The accusation was met with vehement denial from Rita, who retaliated by blaming me for the predicament. As the tension escalated, Luke implored Rita to re-examine the DNA report carefully. He clarified that the document presented pertained to a DNA test conducted between Nigel and himself, indicating no familial connection. Rita, shocked by this revelation, looked at me disbelievingly, realizing her carefully guarded secret of 25 years was unraveling before her eyes. Rita's attempt to expose what she believed was my secret had backfired, exposing her own concealed truth. The gravity of the situation sank in as Luke and Nigel expressed their anger. Rita, sensing the magnitude of her predicament, clutched the report in disbelief, repeatedly reading it as if hoping for a different outcome. In a desperate attempt to salvage her narrative, she insisted, "No, no, no. This can't be true. There must be a mistake. Nigel is Luke's child." The revelation had turned the tables, leaving all of us in a state of disbelief and Rita scrambling to confront the consequences of her own actions. "I'm certain of it. We were actively trying for a child when I conceived Nigel." "Nigel is your child, Luke," Rita asserted. "Oh, really, Rita? So you're suggesting the reports are false, and you didn't cheat on me at all?" Luke countered. "Nigel is your son, Luke. You have to believe me. This witch, Mia, has manipulated you into getting a paternity test to tamper with your report and seek revenge against me. It wasn't just Mia's plan, it was mine as well. Remember how I visited the doctor recently for some tests? The results showed I've been infertile my entire life. I never knew because I'd never seen a doctor before. There's no way Nigel is my son." "No, no, no. This can't be happening. This can't be true," Rita exclaimed, her face draining of color. "I even have a hunch who Nigel's biological father is. It's Fred, your ex before you married me." Rita's reaction confirmed our suspicions. Nigel remained silent, his expression a mix of anger and betrayal. He felt crushed, not just by the revelation, but also by the fear of losing the only father figure he'd known. The disbelief and anger were palpable among everyone present. Rita's own mother looked as if she might faint. None of them knew about Rita's affair or the fact that Nigel wasn't Luke's biological son. It was a devastating blow for Rita, who started to cry as Luke confronted her. Luke's declaration was a balm for Nigel's wounded soul. Assured of his place in Luke's heart, Nigel broke down in tears. Meanwhile, Luke and the others addressed Rita's deceit. "You were right, Luke. You raised my son for 25 years. He is yours," Rita pleaded. "We can forget about the DNA test. Things can go back to normal." "No, Rita. Things will never go back to normal," Luke asserted, "every time." I gazed at Hugh, and all I could see was the shadow of your betrayal. "Nigel might be my son, but you were no wife of mine. A woman who cheats on her husband cannot be my wife. I am going to divorce you, and that's final." "No, no, no, Luke. You can't do this. We've been married for 30 years. You can't leave me over this," Rita pleaded, her shock palpable, yet her refusal to understand evident. The people around, including her own family, rallied behind Luke's decision, hurling insults at Rita and agreeing with his resolve. Rita, still in tears and in desperation, turned to Nigel, begging for his intervention. "Nigel, look at what Luke is saying. He's going to leave me. Please, don't make him leave me. Please make him understand. Don't you dare call me son. I don't want to call you mother anymore. You are the most vile woman I have ever known. You hid my parentage and dragged my wife through the dirt for nothing," Nigel retorted, his anger and disappointment evident. "I can't even look at you now." "No, no. I am your mother, that is true. I swear I gave birth to you. I am sorry, son. I am so sorry for everything. Please don't hate me." "I made a mistake," Rita pleaded, her desperation reaching new depths as she turned to me for support. "That's something I never expected to happen," I responded, incredulous at Rita's audacity. "Rita, you dug your own grave. You betrayed my husband and my father-in-law for 3 decades. You don't deserve anyone's forgiveness." "It was a mistake, Mia. You are an honest woman, and I know you really care about your family. Your new family is about to be broken. Mia, please don't let it happen," Rita implored, her desperation palpable. "My new family includes me, my son Nigel, and Luke. You are not my family, Rita," I asserted, firm in my resolve. "A woman who treated me so badly and betrayed her own family cannot be my family. I don't want you around me or my son again." Nigel, his voice chillingly calm, made his stance clear. "Stay the hell away from me and my family. Dad is doing the right thing by divorcing you. You deserve that. And that's what you wanted, right? You wanted to prove that a son doesn't belong to his father, that a father should divorce his wife. That's what's happening now, Rita. Unfortunately for you, it's happening to your family." Rita's world crumbled around her as Nigel's words sank in. The once warm and loving person now exuded cold resolve. Luke wasted no time in taking legal action. initiating divorce proceedings and starting the eviction process against Rita. Despite her desperate attempts to seek sympathy, her pleas fell on deaf ears. Rita's actions had consequences, and she was about to face them. "I only have a small amount of money that I need for a divorce lawyer. I need a place to stay. You can go anywhere you want, Rita. We won't be the ones housing you. Plus, we already told you that we want nothing to do with you." "I'm your mom, Nigel. Why are you calling me by my name?" "I am your mother," Rita protested. This infuriated me. While I was glad Rita was facing the consequences, the paternity fiasco took a toll on both Nigel and Luke. Luke dealt with it in his way, but Nigel was a mess. It pained me to see him cry and struggle while I juggled comforting him and caring for our newborn. Rita acting like it was no big deal angered me. "I believe you have already lost that privilege, Rita. From now on, you are just a stranger to us. And Nigel is right. We won't be housing you." "Mia, please don't do this to me. My grandson needs his grandma in his life," Rita pleaded. "Don't you dare call my son your grandson. Your own son refused to call you mom, and you can't be a grandma to a child you never wanted in your life. Don't try to use my innocent child to guilt us. It won't work. We've had enough of your antics, Rita. It's time for you to leave. Don't bother showing up again, because I will call the cops on you. Trust me, you don't want more legal trouble after this," I asserted. Rita cried and pleaded a bit more before Nigel shut the door in her face. It was satisfying to see her suffer for the chaos she caused. She stayed away until it was time for her to leave Luke's house. She tried to beg and guilt us into letting her in again, but nothing worked. She eventually left when we threatened to involve the police. I heard she was staying with a friend who got her a job in her office as a warehouse worker. The divorce battle was ugly as Rita tried to manipulate things in her favor, but living in an at-fault state, her excuses didn't hold up. They got divorced in 6 months, and she's now miserable, working in a warehouse and earning the minimum. She's been cut off from the entire family, receiving no invites to parties or gatherings. Nigel and Luke are doing much better after therapy. It's heartening to see them maintain a strong bond despite the DNA report. We still have weekly family dinners, and Luke spends time with his grandson often. Overall, we've managed to return to our normal lives while Rita languishes in